Good morning, Jim.
Good morning to you. Simon's alongside me. We're delighted you're back in our show. Before we get into some of the minutiae that came out of yesterday, let's talk about the fact that England are 2 down. Is this series now drifting away from England?
Well, I would have said so if the teams weren't so evenly divided. I mean, we only lost the first match by 2 wickets, and frankly, we should have won it. And because of our antics in the first innings this time, we only lost by 43, despite a 91 lead the Australians had in the first innings. So no, I think not all is lost. And on one occasion, the Australians came back from 2-0 down and won 3-2. So I think the odds are not good, but fingers crossed.
Okay, so let's get to it. On this Jonny Bairstow run out, he was stumped and gone. Hugely controversial. Not in the spirit of the game and all that. But it was the right decision, yeah?
Technically, the law says it was a right decision. But what I found interesting and haven't seen in the papers this morning or heard on radio and television is to keep reminding people it was the last ball of the over. If it had been one of the first 5 balls, I suspect Jonny Bairstow would have remained in his crease. But as it was the 6th ball, and he'd been bowled a bumper, he leant down. I watched it very carefully. He leant down. It was the 6th ball. It landed in the gloves of Carey, and he assumed that was the end of the over. Now, you can describe that as naive, as several papers have. But in the spirit of the game, it might have been wise, perhaps not for Carey, who, to do him justice, may have done it on the spur of the moment. But the captain, Cummins, might have walked over to the umpire and said, as Brealey did on one occasion, I don't think we'll go ahead with that. We'll withdraw that appeal, sir, and walked away. Not a hope. Now, what is really interesting for you two to discuss is it's not long ago in Newlands, South Africa, that 2 people who were on that pitch, Smith and Warner, when they were captain and vice-captain of Australia, admitted ball tampering and cheating. And when they were confronted with it, Smith burst into tears and said, if I'm ever given another chance, I'll never do anything like that again. And Warner said, yes, I have been caught cheating. I'll never do it again. One of them might have walked up to Cummins and said, this isn't in the spirit of cricket. But neither of them did.
So Jeffrey, I brought that up. I brought that specifically up about Steve Smith and his behaviour. I brought that up as well. I mean, the challenge is, Jeffrey, do you think if England were 200 runs behind with 8 wickets down and there was no chance of winning that game, the Australians would have done precisely what you suggest they would, that Mike, or that Mike Brealey did all those years ago, because the game was in jeopardy. They knew that England, the game was afoot, that Ben Stokes was in the groove, and Bairstow and Stokes would have given us a distinct possibility of winning that game. And I think it was more about their ruthlessness than perhaps the attitude of Warner and Smith to give Cummins a nudge, don't you think?
I accept that without question, but may I add, without every woke person coming back at me, if you believe in the spirit of the game, it doesn't matter what the situation is. You behave properly. Okay, the Australians want to win at any cost. So be it. Let them have it, is my attitude. I have always been proud to stand up and applaud someone who beats my team. When Lyon came onto the pitch, and I was in the ground, when Lyon came onto the pitch hobbling, I stood and applauded. And when he left, I stood and applauded. I thought that showed such courage.
Yeah.
And I was so full of admiration.
Jeffrey, what would you have said? What would you have said if Ben Stokes had done it? What would your attitude be?
Well, that's a question. That's a question.
No, it isn't. You two are half asleep. Have you not read the morning papers? Ben Stokes said he would not.
No, I'm not telling you what he said he would have done, right? Because it's easy to say you wouldn't do it if you're not put in that position. But we're talking about winning and losing, and you're saying it's winning at all costs, right? What would you have said to Stokesy if he'd have done it?
I would have remained silent if I'd been a member of his team and spoken to him in private in the pavilion.
Jeffrey, this morning the MCC suspended 3 members over their roles in the unsavoury scenes in the long room. Right. Give me your take on that, because
absolutely right.
These are the so-called privilege, right?
Absolutely. I have the privilege of being a member of the MCC. The way to behave when that team came in, it's traditional. When the opposition team come in, or indeed as just as much your own team, you applaud as they enter the long room, take that long walk up the stairs to their particular place. Now, I think the way to behave was just not to applaud. That would have been a much stronger message. Silence sometimes is a great message.
Yeah, but is that in the spirit of the game? Is that in the spirit of the game? Not applauding?
Well, they behaved badly, those 3. And I was glad that the Guy Lavender, our secretary, decided to ban them while an inquiry takes place. They were just as bad as Cummins not going up to. Now, Simon Heffer writes a very good article in today's Telegraph, where he says he understands that Carey might have done that on the spur of the moment. But after a few moments, when the umpires were having a discussion, that was the time when Cummins should have said, wait a moment, do we need to win at any cost? And to which Cummins decided, yes, we need to win at any cost.
Did you hear what Cummins said, though, about the fact that they've tracked this and they've seen Bairstow doing it, and it's actually in their vision line, Jeffrey. They talked about him doing it in 2019. So this wasn't a case of Carey acting in isolation. This was something they knew that Bairstow did.
Yes, which does show that the suggestion in the Times this morning is that he was naive. I'm not saying that Carey didn't keep to the law. I'm not saying that wasn't the correct. I'm not saying they didn't even track it. But come on.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.